So
Made my day.
welcome everybody to this February edition of the Bookselling Research Network seminar series. We are really delighted today to have Mark Thornton, who is the UK Bookshops Partnerships Manager from bookshop.org, who has come to tell us a bit about bookshop.org in the UK and tell us a bit about the history of it and some of the recent initiatives that it's doing now, and also how it works with independent bookshops and to support the work that they do. So, Mark, I think I'll let you do any other introduction to yourself that you might need to do, and I'll hand over to you. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much, Sam. And thank you very much for welcoming me today. It's a real thrill to. I was actually at UCL yesterday talking to the I guess the MA publishing group, which was a fantastic session. It's always nice to get out from behind the Zoom screen and talk to people as well. But I'm also really thrilled to sort of talk to you here now. Just a little bit about myself. My name's Mark Thornton. I was an independent bookseller for 11 years. And then I went and joined bookshop.org for the UK launch team. So bookshop.org launched in the US in February 2020. And then it launched in the UK in November 2020. So we're going to be celebrating 5 years this year, and a lot has happened in those 5 years. So what I'd like to do today is I've got a presentation which I will go through just to explain three things really: what bookshop.org is, and sort of how it works and the mechanics of it. The kind of why of why bookshop.org, how did it come about, what are the kind of the market forces and the sort of the online retail situation in books, which led to the creation of bookshop.org, and then so that's sort of the what, the why, and then the how, which is how we work with bookshops and the sort of wider book community to support independent bookshops. I'm really keen to take and answer questions. So, either put your hand up or put something in the chat, and I'll try and spot those questions. But I'll also try and take regular pauses to take questions as well. So let me just share my screen. So, my job title, which is Senior Partnership Manager, means I get to work with sort of strategic partners, but it's also my incredible privilege to work with. We now have 609 independent bookshops, bookshop.org, and nearly 13,000 affiliates. Although, to be fair, not all of those affiliates are particularly active. And it does give me an incredible view across the sort of bookselling landscape as as it relates to independent bookshops. What is bookshop.org? Well, bookshop.org has a very simple mission. Our mission is to support independent bookshops, and that word mission is quite important. So bookshop.org itself, and I'll come back to mission in a moment, but bookshop.org itself is an e-commerce platform, and it's an e-commerce platform that anyone can use to sell books. So you can go onto our platform for free with no commitment and set up a bookshop, and you can start curating books and lists and selling books in support of bookshops. But we differentiate between bookshop affiliates and non-bookshop affiliates, which we call MBAs. And if you're a bookshop affiliate, which means you are a physical bookshop, you have opening hours so people can come and visit and browse your bookshop, you will earn 30% on all sales on bookshop.org, and that's 30% off the RRP. So if you go on to bookshop.org, which we'll do in a moment, if you go on to bookshop.org, like a lot of e-commerce sites, we have a modest discount. It's about 5%, and that's just a sort of that's kind of good retail psychological practice. People like to see a little line through the headline price and a small amount of discount. And when you think about 30% discount, if like when I was running my bookshop, which was mostly books in Abingdon, which is still going, I'm glad to say, if I bought a £10 book from a publisher, I might get a 55% or even a 60% discount on ordering that book. So if I sold that book at full price, I might be making the percentage of the sale that I would then keep, might be sort of 55%. And so when we first launched, people saying, well, 30% doesn't sound that great, but of course it's 30% book shipped. So if I wanted to ship a book out and send it to somebody who ordered online, I would have to pay for the postage, the packing, the time it sends to ship that book, and then deal with any problems. We do all of that for affiliates. We ship the book. Our fulfillment partner is Gardeners, and we will deal with any problems or shipping issues. So that 30% actually turns out to be a very good deal for bookshops. And in fact, our website is optimized to provide value for bookshops. So on their own sort of direct sales, they're getting 30%. But I told you that anyone can sell on bookshop.org. So, we have publishers, we have authors, we have influencers, we have educators, the people who have, we even have a sort of Doctor Who fan club selling Doctor Who titles in the shop. They earn, so when they sell a book, they earn 10% on that book, and a further 10% goes to a shared pool, which is shared monthly between all the bookshops on the platform. So it does mean that every single every sale on bookshop.org benefits independent bookshops. So that's a very important thing to keep in mind. What we're trying to do is to provide a site where everybody benefits from sales, but independent bookshops benefit from every sale. And if you went onto the bookshop.org site today, you would see there's two things to sort of point out. One is a kind of tally, if you like, of the amount of money that's been generated for bookshops, which appears at the top. And that's the total amount of money that's been earned by bookshops since we launched. And it splits roughly 40% direct sales to 60% affiliate sales through the pool. That's kind of the rough divider. And that's just you'll see a series of lists on the homepage. And it just so happens that the Women's Prize for Non-Fiction long list was announced on Wednesday. We have a strategic partnership with the Women's Prize. I'll talk about that in a moment. And there'll be a series of curated lists. If you have a VPN, you can actually go and visit the US site. It's a similar look. There's a few little things that are different. The US site and the UK site use roughly the same code base with a few important differences. You'll see that the amount of money that they've raised for bookstores is significantly more. The US market is about 5 times the size of the UK market, but the US have been around for longer. They've just launched with ebooks. I'll mention that a little bit in a moment. And they have about 17 or 1,800 bookshops on the platform as well. So they're just a bigger business. But one of the great things about having being part of a global organization with a site like the US, which is slightly ahead, is that we can look ahead and see what's working for them and what. I talked about mission, and bookshop.org is a B-Corp. And for those of you not familiar with what a B-Corp is, it's a global movement of for-profit companies that have an ethical basis for their for how they run the business, but also they are audited. So there's a certification that goes with it. So we say that we support independent bookshops, but we have to prove that. We have to demonstrate it, and we are audited against that. And in 2022, we were amongst one of the top 5% of B-Corps globally in terms of our impact on shops and in terms of how we're audited. And we're just going through another auditing process now for the 2024 auditing process as well. So when we say, it's our mission to support independent bookshops, we have someone holding us to account in terms of how we do that. So as I say, 609 bookshops on bookshop.org as of yesterday morning, which is when I'm making this slide. And as I say, every time they make a sale, they earn a 30% profit, and there's no other costs to them. They don't carry any of that stock. We do all the fulfillment. And it's worth just mentioning as well that something I hinted at the beginning, I ran an independent bookshop. And so in my own mind, and been talking to a few other booksellers, I sort of had an idea of the kind of bookshop that what an independent bookshop was. When you look across so many different book businesses, there are a bewildering number of ways that you can run an independent bookshop. I know independent bookshops that are independent bookshops plus barbershops. There's Poetry Pharmacy, who are a bookshop but also sell poems in a bottle that you can sort of prescribe like you would if you were a doctor. You'll see there's a picture from Main Street Company. They are a bookshop and home furnishing and deli, and in fact they produce sort of packages. And I think the best way of looking at independent bookshops, particularly how they survive in the modern world, is that they work out what their community needs, and they adapt their shops, but with a core of getting people reading, getting their community reading, placing books in the hands of readers that they think they're going to actually love. But in terms of actually how they survive and thrive, there's an incredible range of innovation that happens within bookshops. And so bookshop.org is really just a kind of another innovation, but one that takes a sort of a more of a team approach between all the bookshops that are on the platform. When I talk about impact, I mean, we are always getting feedback from bookshops and feedback, and I've just shared some here. It also kind of just gives you a sense of what happens to the income that bookshops receive from bookshop.org. Some bookshops are very active on bookshop.org. They don't have their own websites, and they do all of their online selling through us. Fred's is a good example. They're a bookshop in Ambleside, in the Lake District. But in this particular instance, and the reason I've included that post on the left was because Sue took over ownership of Fred's in 2023 and closed the shop for 3 weeks to completely do rewiring and to refurbish the whole building. And so she was able to continue trading on bookshop.org while the shop was closed. But some bookshops have their own website, so they receive a share of the pool, but they're not actively sort of selling. But the income that they receive is very impactful for them. For a lot of bookshops pay a living wage, which is a sort of an extra cost on top of the sort of baseline cost of living. And Kaylee at Lisnajan and Sam at Nairn Books have sort of called out the fact that income from bookshop.org has helped to meet some rising costs, whether that's utilities or staffing. And in the case of Timber Books, they're a bookshop in a church, and they were actually able to use the income that they earned from bookshop.org to have a new boiler because they didn't have any heating, which when you're in Scotland is an issue. So but there's in terms of the income that bookshops receive from bookshop.org, it is meaningful, and it either helps with the general running of the shop or it's put towards specific strategic plans that the shop has. So that's all what bookshop.org is. I'd like to just quickly go through why bookshop. So if we could sort of go back a few years, this is the reason for using this stock photo, by the way. This is my friend Nigel French from Coles, and I found this when I was searching for a stock photo, and I thought it was hilarious that this was the one that I found. So that's why it says stock photo. But you went into a bookshop, a bookseller would have a stack of books. They would give you that to choose from, and we all know that model, if you like, has been we've moved light years past that model. So instead of going into a bookshop and having a bookseller recommend books to you, this is just something that I took from my own Facebook feed, where there was a discussion amongst some of my some contacts about issues they were having with their teenage children, and someone said, "Hey, I found this book. It just popped up on my feed today, probably algorithmically," and they just cut and pasted the link into the discussion. And a lot of book recommendations now are what they call social cues or social selling, and of course what's become a kind of a habit of people is just to use Amazon links, because everybody kind of understand how Amazon links work, and most people have an Amazon account, and Amazon has this insanely high brand recognition of like 99.7% in the population. It is just insane. And in fact, Amazon has, in a way, Amazon is really the internet. It was the last company standing in that sort of early few years of the internet. If it hadn't have been Amazon, it probably would have been somewhere else. someone told me the other day that you largely cannot get through the day in modern life without using Amazon in some way. Amazon Web Services, or you'll be caught on camera by a security camera that's run by Amazon. You will buy something, you will have something shipped to you. Some part of your supply chain, some part of your day-to-day life will be influenced by Amazon. But the graph that I've put up here is a more interesting one, just in terms of internet sales. And I started my bookshop back in 2006, and that's where I started the graph. And you can go onto the Office for National Statistics and look for this graph, which is updated every month, which is internet sales as a percentage of total retail sales. Back in 2006, it was single-digit percentage points, and it's risen steadily and inexorably. And those little peaks each year at Christmas. And then, not surprisingly, the percentage soared during COVID and lockdown. But in fact, the rather sort of inexpertly added line on that graph at the top there is to show you that the most recent, sort of one of the most recent month sales is as much as sales in that sort of first dip between the first and second lockdown. And so internet sales are just growing, and will continue to do so, and they don't seem to show any signs of shutting down, as it were. I'm just going to stop that share at the moment and see if anybody had any questions. I don't think so.
Can't see anything in the chat either, Mark.
Okay,
so
great.
You're good to go. Yeah.
Carry on going. Okay, so I told you about sort of social sharing and where we discover books, where book discoverability starts. 2 out of 3 books in the UK are now bought online. That's somewhat disputed. It's very rough, and it depends on who you talk to. But if you include audiobooks, ebooks, secondhand, subscription boxes, huge growth in the market in the last few years. It's about 2/3 of all books are now bought online. 1/3 of those purchases start with a Google search. So a lot of people go in and search that perhaps they've heard about a book, and they'll go in and type a keyword or type the book itself. Roughly 1/4 to 1/3 of online purchases have email at some point. So you might receive, you might be signed up to an email from a favorite author. You might be signed up to a bookshop email, or you might receive an update from sort of Amazon or Waterstones, or someone will, might send you an email. And so email is also a very important way that the discoverability influences discoverability. And about 50% of purchases are also influenced by social media. So social media plays this incredible role. Obviously, the social media landscape is even more chaotic than it's traditionally been in recent years. And, a lot of people switching platforms or coming off certain platforms. When you add in, Reddit, Snapchat, WhatsApp, any of the messaging services that you might use within your family, all of these things in terms of sort of messaging and social media and everything. But the point really to make is that the conversation about books will happen offline and online. And when it happens online, quite often it is accompanied by a link, and that link is often to Amazon. And so really what, the challenge for booksellers has been that, consumers want to sort of connect to expertise, but they want that kind of convenience. And because buying triggers happen socially, not just in the bookshop, booksellers have to go to where those kind of online conversations are happening. And so because Amazon grew so big off the back of just being the place where everybody linked to, Andy Hunter, who's the CEO and founder of bookshop.org, he originally conceived of the idea of bookshop.org back in about 2015. And so his idea was to provide an alternative way that everyone could link, and no one needs to use Amazon in a way that benefits bookshop. So we've rattled through, what bookshop.org is in terms of its functioning as an e-commerce site. why, the market, if you like, the reasoning, the all the factors that came to bring bookshop.org into existence. And so what I would say has happened in the last few years has been, during our kind of early days in startup mode, it was just a case of getting bookshops into a position where they could sell online, sort of in those very strange days of the lockdown where a lot of retail switched online. And in a way, what's happened, first of all, the site has matured. We've become much more sort of well known, and our platforms have kind of stabilized, but also we've understood what our role is in the marketplace. And I would say we have two ways that we fulfill our mission of supporting Bookshop. And the first way is to actually support bookshops directly, to help them grow the skills and the confidence to step into those online conversations, to curate books, do digital hand selling, share links. So that's one of our roles, is to help bookshops become better and more confident in terms of how they sell online. But the second way is to actually, there's like a wider book trade educational piece where we, give publishers, authors, influencers the sort of information they need and the opportunities to support bookshops, and not just going to default link to Amazon. So what I would like to do is to take you through both of those areas, and give you some actual concrete examples which are either happening now or are going to be happening in the next few months, so you can actually see how that actually, how we actually do that. We don't just talk about it. So how do we help booksellers? Well, booksellers, their wheelhouse, their focus has to be in their own shop. They need to be there for when customers come off the street. And of course, our mission is to make sure that physical book selling environment endures. And so quite often the skills they have around, digital in general, and particularly around social media and email, may not be as strong. And they often lack confidence. And the lack of confidence isn't just about skills. It's also a kind of sneaky suspicion that because Amazon has almost kind of, it's sort of colonized everybody's, if you were to use the term books and technology, Amazon is probably the first name that comes to mind. And so in a way, booksellers became mistrustful of technology, and by stepping into technology, and I've had this conversation with many booksellers, even those booksellers that kind of are quite confident about technology feel in some way they're betraying the physical book. They're kind of somehow by posting links, by offering customers the opportunity to buy online, they're somehow, that's undermining their brand, their role, and that's kind of letting the side down, if you like, from a sort of collegiate view of bookselling. And there's a quote, I haven't got it in the slide deck here, but it's Castor, who are a sports company. And a few years ago, Castor started as an online company, but they started opening shops. And the reason they started opening shops was they said, whenever we open a shop, we see a spike in online sales in and around that community. And it's because people like to see this. They like to see shops in their community. They like to have the opportunity to go in. They like to know that, their kids might have a chance of a Saturday job, which, just one of the many things that small retail does. But on a day-to-day basis, they don't have the time to go in, and so they want to be able to. And so what I tell booksellers is you just should flip it around and say, operating digitally, because you have a physical shop, you have the best of both worlds, and you have this, this amazing sort of combination of the on and the offline world. So it is about kind of just helping booksellers to become more comfortable about selling, and then show them that this isn't undermining their physical shops, but it's actually, it's a force multiplier. It makes their physical shop so much more valuable in terms of what they do and the business opportunities they have. That's the first thing, and I'll give you some examples of that in a moment. We also create marketing moments. If you go onto the bookshop.org website at the moment, you'll see a little pop-up. We're running a giveaway, which means that anybody who buys a book today or Saturday or Sunday will be entered into a competition to win a year's subscription for Bloom and Wildflowers. And so we create assets, then we give that to the booksellers to make it their own. So the booksellers can go to their own audience, their own email list, their own social channels, and say, if you join in with this, if you support us, you'll be entered into this competition. So that's kind of one of the things that we do. I'll finish this slide and then I'll go and respond to that chat. And then we also provide assets and ideas for content creation. So one of the things that we work very hard with booksellers is to help them plan out social posts, email newsletters. And, some booksellers are very good. Many booksellers are really good at that, but some booksellers need a little bit of extra help. Sometimes, they're exhausted, they're tired, the creativity levels are low. So we can sort of create examples and best practice to help give them image assets, exclusive content from authors is something that we do, and just ideas for them to take what they do and then put it out online. No problem. So let's start with building skills and confidence. So we run regular online training sessions. We've done 2 so far this year. We've got 2 coming up in March and April, where we'll take a specific aspect of bookselling. We'll bring other booksellers in to share their experience. We'll get experts in, or we'll give them very tangible tasks. And if they want, we'll go in and check on their activity to see how it's going on. And so that's something that we've been running. They're very focused. They tend to be about 6 p.m. Just to reflect how busy they are and when they've closed their shop. We also create look ahead calendars. So in other words, we give them calendars of these marketing moments, so they can actually put those in the diary and get key staff and members of their team ready, so they can sort of plan a bit further ahead. I'm just going to go to, someone's got the hand up. Gail, have you got a question? Do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Yeah, I've got various more philosophical questions, which I'll leave till later. But I just wondered if you could clarify on a practical level about creating the marketing moments, because I wasn't quite sure. I didn't quite understand what you were saying about how you did that. But also, I was wondering whether bookshops have to pay for your, building skills and so on, and how you deal with all that. So that was, those are my 2 questions for now.
2 good questions. So starting with the last one first, no, they don't pay for this. It's all free. So there's no cost to signing up on bookshop.org. There's no ongoing costs. There's no ongoing commitments. I don't think any bookshop has ever left bookshop.org because they get a share of the pool, however active or they do. But no, there is no cost. So this is all, again, we pay for this out of how bookshop.org operates. And it's all in the service of our mission to support independent bookshops. And we're very much guided by the bookshops themselves. So to give you an example, the April digital training session on Blue Sky is very much because that's what booksellers told us that they wanted to know about. Was Blue Sky, a lot of bookshops are moving off X onto Blue Sky, or they're just setting up Blue Sky accounts. So they just wanted to know, is it the same as Twitter as was, and is there anything else they need to do? So it's very much guided by them. We don't have endless resources to put into this, so we do tend to just focus it. We have, we'll be at LBF, so we'll be at the London Book Fair. We'll be meeting booksellers, and we also we'll run a session at the BA conference in the autumn as well.
And so are these for affiliates only, or is that for anybody who? So
these tend to be for booksellers, for physical booksellers. So. Right. Just to make the point that if you're a bookshop, everything is geared towards supporting you. Non-bookshop affiliates, we do run 1 or 2 what we call town hall events every year, so that people can come on and learn about how they can support independent bookshops. But those resources tend to be more. We send out a regular newsletter every week to bookshops, which tells them about upcoming marketing opportunities or training resources or just other things we think might be useful for them. For non-bookshop affiliates, that tends to be a monthly update. So they'll get a lot of the same assets to join in with a marketing moment. Let me explain a little bit about what that is a little bit more, but it's very much geared up to physical bookshops. And again, it's to reflect the fact that, you know, so we have plenty of online only booksellers on bookshop.org, but they don't have a physical bookshop. So they're not part of our mission, only insofar as if they do well on bookshop.org and their sales contributing to the pool. So we have to structure the resources that we give to affiliates, and that's why we differentiate between bookshop affiliates and non-bookshop affiliates. In terms of marketing moments, so those are, if you look at the calendar that's up on the screen there, a marketing moment, for example, might be like that you can see there on the 8th of April, the International Booker Prize shortlist is announced. Okay, so we would define that as a marketing moment in the sense that we have a strategic partnership with the Booker. We get hold of the shortlist ahead of time. We will create that as a list, and then as soon as that list is announced, we'll share that list with the booksellers in a way that they can very quickly add it to their own storefronts and share it with their customers. So, and we will provide assets as well that allow them to. So we will make a library of assets available, you know, from the Booker. And, you know, anybody can sign up to the Booker list and get those assets and sign up to the embargo list. But the way that we do it is very much with a bookshop.org. So we will give them social copy so that booksellers can, you know, very quickly say, hey, you know, let's celebrate the Booker shortlist being announced. Come and have a look at our list on bookshop.org. So it's that kind of thing, which is a marketing moment. And an alternative marketing moment is, if you look at 10th to the 11th of May, we have a gift card giveaway. So any sales on the weekend of the 10th and the 11th of May, anyone who buys a book through any link, through any affiliate, will be entered into a competition to win a £250 gift card. And so what we say to the bookshops is, we can see it on our sales. We'll have a spike of sales for that weekend. So we give the assets, and we say to the bookshops, if you can use the same message, you know, we want you to support in shop. If you can, and if you can't, you can support us on bookshop.org. And this weekend, if you support us on bookshop.org, we'll be in with a chance of winning a £250 gift card. Not all bookshops join in with those marketing moments. This isn't a kind of, you must do all of these things. It's in its purest sense, bookshop.org is a platform. And if booksellers want to stand on that platform and take advantage of it, they can. Plenty of bookshops, you know, our marketing stuff leaves them cold because it's just like it's not really their thing, you know. If they're a children's bookshop, for example, or if they are, you know, a specialist, you know, trying to think of somebody who would, it's not, this isn't prescriptive. It's just saying these are a series of resources that you can use.
Thank you.
No problem. So that's kind of, it was a good question actually, because let me share you some other things about curation and digital hand selling. So Argonaut Books, which is a radical bookshop up in Leith in Edinburgh. Again, if you go onto our homepage today, you'll see a series of curated lists. So we editorially select lists for the homepage display to provide a good consumer experience for anybody coming onto the site. And it's LGBTQ plus History Month, and so Argonaut Books have created a list. And the list, if you like, is the sort of is the really sort of core concept of how bookshop.org works, because we encourage, you know, there are thousands and thousands of lists that are curated and created and shared by booksellers. And it's just sort of worth saying that, you know, when I first joined bookshop.org, the thing that really, when I really got it was when someone explained the list, because when people used to come into my bookshop, you know, I think a lot of booksellers are kind of like, well, look, you know, come and explore all the books on our shelves. And most people are kind of coming in very much for, you know, they want some new science fiction to read, or they're buying a gift for somebody. What was much more common, and equally, you wouldn't sort of zoom down to a single book and just say, okay, this is the book we're kind of pushing into everybody's hands at the moment. More likely, you would pick 3, 4, 5 books off a shelf and put them down and give that to the customer and say, go and have a look at these selections, which I can really recommend. Because then the customer still has agency, they're still choosing, but they feel that they're getting a kind of curated experience. And that's really where where lists sort of come in. So the list mechanism, if you like, allows for curation, and then the sharing of that list is a sort of a digital hand selling moment, which is very much very similar to what happens in a bookshop. And going back to those marketing moments, this is the campaign that's running at the moment. If you go to bookshop.org, which is the Bloom and Wild giveaway, this was a gift card giveaway that we ran in January, and we try and produce those sort of basic assets. Quite often we make those assets customizable, so bookshops can put their own logo on. We also do a book of the month. So we do book of the month for both children's and adults, and we will produce, so those books of the month are available with an extra 10% discount on the site. We pay for that discount. The booksellers still receive their full for 30% commission. Non-bookshop affiliates will receive the 10%, but usually our books of the month tie in with additional support from publishers and authors. And again, we will create the assets. Some booksellers really love our books of the month and join in, and some bookshops have their own books of the month, so that it doesn't really sort of match up with what they're doing. So again, it's this idea of a platform, and booksellers can sort of pick from a menu of options sort of throughout the year. Here's a couple of examples where we've had giveaways that booksellers have taken and sort of, customized themselves. So the one on the right is, so the one on the right is from Scripthaven, which I think is in Worcester. And that's kind of a bookshop that grew out of a writing group, funnily enough. And so they just took the asset, posted it, and that's just a straightforward, they adapted the copy that we shared with them to do the post. On the left, which is Book Corner up in Saltburn, so Jenna was saying, we've got this gift card giveaway this weekend. You can win a £250 gift card, but here's a suggestion to get you started. And one of the interesting conversations that I often have with booksellers is that there is, coming back to this idea of it being an uncomfortable space sometimes for booksellers, is online, because you're kind of sharing links which may end up anywhere. The recommending of individual titles can actually be quite powerful, because it does two things. One is it says, look, this is a book that we're going to nail our colors to the mast. We love this book. Go and have a look at it. And it sort of, it helps build your brand as someone who has, the courage of their convictions, someone who's going to recommend something and say, this is something that really, speaks to our customers, that we've read, that we've really enjoyed. But paradoxically, when people share individual links, quite often people will then spend more time looking around the bookshop and saying, oh, that's a really interesting title. I wonder what else they're recommending. So this is something that we also try to encourage, is that sort of individual single sharing of titles, which then sits sort of outside the list. But that's just two very quick examples of how bookshops share assets. So I said that our role is twofold. One is to help bookshops directly, but the other one is to work with the wider book world to help them support independent bookshops. And it's one of the important strands of our book, possibly more important than the first one, not maybe to the individual bookshops. The first is to make it easier for publishers and authors to link. And I'll share an anecdote that I shared with the students yesterday, which was, so I don't know if any of you know Village Books, run by Hazel Broadfoot, who used to be chair of the BA. She had a publisher turn up with an author, took pictures, had signed copies, and then the publicist, when they got back to sort of HQ, shared those pictures and then just included links to Amazon. And it's, yes, exactly, that's the right response. And it's not uncommon. And it sort of stems from, it stems from two things. One is everyone in the book world is just under pressure all the time, and Amazon is just, people have been trained to sort of share those links. But the other one is just a kind of a slight ignorance of the alternatives that exist to how you share links. And of course, one of the things that publicists used to say, or anybody sort of, sharing links online, was, well, we can't share links to every single individual bookshop. And so bookshop.org is a great way of of allowing people and publishers and authors an alternative to share a link which will support independent bookshops. So I think that sort of side of our work is just about, most publishers, many authors have their own affiliate pages on bookshop.org, and it just means that they can include those links alongside Amazon and Waterstones. We're not, this is not about, choosing bookshop.org instead of Amazon. It's just saying, give people a choice. Don't just use Amazon. People are going to find Amazon whether they want to or not, quite frankly. But the ability to share links to bookshop.org is just a way. And if you go on to certainly the bigger publishers now, many of the books they have will have, a series of links to different, websites. And when you add in audio and you'll see a whole list of sort of different options. And increasingly, you'll see bookshop.org there. And often that's a result of conversations we've had at a very high level, both in the US and the UK. So the culture is changing, but it is changing slowly. And so that's kind of that's the first thing. We make it easy for publishers and authors to provide a link which supports independent bookshops. We also run mission-driven campaigns, which are often aimed at influencers, but also sort of the wider book world as well. And it's just easier to talk about those with examples. So let me come back to that one. And the third bit is we build strategic partnerships and coalitions. So a great example of that, I mentioned we have a sort of strategic partnership with the Women's Prize. If you go onto the Women's Prize site, quite often the links they share it to bookshop.org. Kate Moss has come along and given exclusive chats to booksellers to talk about the prize and what they do. And we've got a marketing moment coming up with the release of the long list for the Women's Prize. And I'll talk about that. So let me start with the strategic partnership. I told you we have a partnership with the Booker Prize. A couple of years ago, we actually put on an event, an exclusive online event, which booksellers were able to invite their own customers to, between two past Booker Prize winners. So Marlon James, who wrote the history of seven deaths in, I can't remember what the title of the book is called. And then Shihan Karan Talaka, who was then the current sort of reigning Booker Prize winner with the 7 Moons of Mali Almeida. So they came online. Booksellers were able to, so we were able to use our partnership with the Booker Prize. They set up the event. Booksellers were able to invite their customers to come along and watch the event. It's still up. You can go and see it. I think it's on YouTube. Wonderful. These two guys suddenly discovering they had a love of comic books when they were growing up. It's absolutely wonderful conversation. We have a partnership with Hay Festival. Hay Festival uses our site both to show support for independent bookshops, but also as a source of funding, which is becoming more and more, all sort of big literary festivals at the moment in the aftermath of the fallout of some of the sponsorship debates that have been happening around literary festivals. And then coming up on the 8th and the 9th of March, as part of our partnership with the Women's Prize and the Women's Prize Trust, 10% of all sales on the weekend of the 8th and 9th of March will go towards the Women's Prize Trust. That's that's us paying for that. That's not coming out of people's pocket. We're hoping to pay for that through increased traffic and sales through the site. This is a great example of those strategic partnerships and what we can do to provide bookshops with opportunities and non-bookshop affiliates with opportunities to support bookshops. Mission-driven campaigns. So you may have seen something called Read It Forward, which is currently running in February, which is a program that I lead within bookshop.org. So this is something that we ran in a trial basis last year with Book Trust. So Book Trust cover England, Wales, Northern Ireland. That went really well. So this year, Scottish Book Trust came on board. So it's a whole UK campaign. So 10% of all sales of children's books that happen during February will go to Book Trust and Scottish Book Trust specifically for early access reading programs with vulnerable and disadvantaged families. We're linking it very, very clearly to something that everybody should be interested about, who cares about a reading culture. And we have reading ambassadors. So a couple of weeks ago, Alexander Armstrong was on the sofa with Ed Balls and Susanna Reid, and they were talking. They were able to promote the campaign. We also have other bookshop Read It Forward ambassadors. So this is Nadine Aisha Jassett, who's a children's author and poet. And we've got like Catherine Rayner, Andy Day, Serena Patel, and we've had about 100, more than 150 children's authors who posted in support of it. So it's a really powerful campaign that's really captured the imagination. That's a great example of a mission-driven campaign. We've had a lot of support from children, educators, children's authors, people who are involved in early years reading programs as well, and literacy. Some of you may have noticed we did something called Books That Give before Christmas, and that was with the Indie Alliance. So the Indie Alliance are an alliance of smaller publishers headed up by Faber. So when you put all of their sales together, they're about the fourth biggest publishing group in the UK by sales. And so they selected, I think every single member of the Indie Alliance selected 2 books. We were able to create a 30-strong list, and anyone buying that list, 10% went towards a charity called Book Banks. And that's what was founded by Emily Rhodes to bring books and book professionals into food banks, which turns out to be a genius move, because people, as a way of getting books to people who maybe can't afford them or don't have access to it, or are just, at a point where books can have a big impact on their lives. And that was specifically, that money was to help them open more book banks. So at the moment, book banks are very focused in London and the Southeast, and that was to expand up to Birmingham, Manchester, Glasgow, and so this is something that we hope, again, will become an annual event. And then this isn't really a mission-driven campaign, but this is something that we started to do, which is to maybe tap into what can I say, slightly more the zeitgeist. This asset, the US team tend to be much more anti-Amazon. We tend to be a bit more playful around our things, and this piece of content and this post that we did a couple of weeks ago or last week was probably one of our most commented on and engaging pieces of content that we've done. So again, bookshops look to us to go sort of toe to toe against Amazon, but also to almost like advocate for them in other areas of some bigger debates around sort of technology and retail at the moment. I will just mention about ebooks. So you may have seen that at the end of January, the US website launched its own ebook solution. So we have our own app, and we have ebooks on the site. And so this is really going back to Andy Hunter's original vision of bookshop.org, which was a site where we can go toe to toe against Amazon across all formats. And ebooks will be coming to the UK, as well as audiobooks within the bookshop.org platform. And we expect that to come online towards the end of this year. So we were kind of, I wouldn't say we were sort of taken aback, but we were there getting on with our stuff. And then suddenly it went, absolutely ballistic in the US. And because bookshop.org is both our company name, but also our website, a lot of people were like going, apparently you've got ebooks. So we very quickly sort of just created a rather homemade asset to say, actually, bookshops are over there, but they're coming here soon. So, but it is a very exciting development, and it's something that we're obviously really excited about because, and again, going back to that way we support bookshops, we were a little bit nervous about ebooks, but it's amazing how many booksellers are now, some booksellers just feel that ebooks was a battle that was lost many years ago, but actually, plenty of booksellers read digitally. They read on a Kindle device. Plenty of booksellers have Audible accounts. It's just part and parcel of the world we live in. And they are now excited that they can then offer ebooks to customers who, quite frankly, have been coming in and saying, I don't want to buy these books on Amazon, but I can't get them anywhere else. Well, now they can. So, and the experience that we're seeing from the US is just, it's amazing how many people are just really happy to see some kind of meaningful to Amazon in the ebook space. So that's really exciting. So just to finish on, in terms of a project that we've been working on with Sam and some of the students on Portico Books, which is to actually help students develop an affiliate page, an account on bookshop.org to give them some experience of creating lists and sort of doing marketing around those lists as well, just to sort of get a sense of and really take part in what is a growing area of the book world. Allows them to experiment and with running an online bookstore with that kind of digital curation and hand selling, and of course, we want it to be exactly the same as all the other affiliate accounts, which is you can earn money and also support independent bookshops. So the students will be creating lists, and we're going to try and pick a list to feature on the homepage from a sort of a creation perspective. And we're also encouraging them to join in with that Women's Prize Trust. And I've extended the invitation via Sam to the students so that they can come along and actually join in with one of the online training sessions, so they can just see what those sessions will be like. I think they might be a bit disappointed that it's going to look remarkably like this with me sitting in front of a Zoom screen running through slides. But that's and in fact, while I'm talking, actually, Sam, I mean, if any of the students that are at the London Book Fair, please encourage them to come down to the BA stand because again, just to see what the day-to-day reality is of what booksellers do. Just on that note of the digital training, I thought I'd just kind of share a little bit about what we found to be the habits of highly effective bookshops. This year, we've been co-creating something called the Digital Marketing Framework, which is a kind of a very broad, very, very simple, I mean, literally one-page strategy that we kind of are updating with feedback from the booksellers, which is to say, you pick one social platform, you plan regular posts, both so you can judge the impact from a regular posting schedule, but also so you minimize your time on the platform and the risk of getting distracted. But you also use it to encourage people to sign up to your email list. We always talk about something called a buyerarchy. And this is, I have to tell you, this is the idea of Richard Drake from Drake the Bookshop, because he was very cross when I used it in a presentation and didn't reference him. But his concept of buyerarchy is a really good one, which is to say, look, we want you in our shops. That's why we created our bookshops. If you can't come to our shops, then use our website, because we have signed copies and exclusive editions. And if you can't use the website, you can support us through bookshop.org or other ways. And so you almost kind of like prioritize it for customers, but give them options to how to support. And email is a really great way of having that regular communication with customers, because it's a platform that's under your control. At the moment, touch wood, no big tech bros have sort of bought email and threatening to sort of, completely change it. And so it's a platform that won't disappear. Email has endured. It's a wonderfully robust communication strategy. So that's the sort of first thing. Not trying to cover all the bases with social media, of just picking one platform and going where you're comfortable, where it feels to be a nice place to spend. And the final thing is just when you're coming with content creation, we give bookshops all these sort of post prompts and ideas, and one of them is just take nice pictures of your shop and use that in the content, because again, what you want to be doing is for people to kind of vicariously enjoy your shop even if they can't come in, but eventually you want them to come and visit you and experience your shop. So that's a kind of real sort of whistle stop trip through bookshop.org. So I appreciate you listening to that. But I'm also keen to hear any questions or any other anything else that I can go through in more detail.
Thank you, Mark. Right, we have got a few minutes. If anybody has got any burning questions they'd like to ask Mark, now is your chance. Alice.
Hi, Mark.
Hiya.
So this is fascinating, utterly fascinating. And as you were speaking, I jumped on the site because it did potentially answer my question, but I can dig a bit deeper. I was interested in whether I can find shops in my area that I can support. And that was fascinating because you have a where to button. And so suddenly I'm calling in from California, and I can suddenly see all the shops nearby and in the entire region. So the geolocation mechanism there is powerful. That's a layer down. Can people just go onto the site and say, I want to buy a book, and then it goes to some shop in the area, or how does that work? And do you have data on the differences of someone going in to find, a shop around the corner?
It's a really great question. And I think one of the things I didn't go into too much detail is how our cookie cookies work on the site, because that's how the affiliation works. So there's a site in the UK called Hive, which is, so we use Gardeners as our affiliation partner. Gardeners have their own direct to consumer site called Hive. Hive, when you've gone through the purchasing process, the last step is to kind of assign a bookshop, or is to say, I want to support this bookshop. We don't do that. What we do is we try to reward who's bringing in the customer to the site in the first place. So if all bookshops, all affiliates have 3 types of link that they can use to bring people to the site. A link to their homepage. So as soon as someone arrives at the site to a particular homepage, so if I'm Main Street trading, I will share a link to my homepage. It sets the bang. I'm now, the cookie means that anything I do within the site, with one important caveat, but I'll get into that in a moment. If you then buy a book, that book will be, the commission will go to the bookshop. They can also share a link to the, so that site page will never change. And so quite often bookshops will have that link on their website, is to say, support us through bookshop.org. They, and use this link. The second thing you can link to is a list. And if you link to your own list, that list will set the cookie as well. So that's just another different. And then finally, you can link to an individual book, but you need to use, you have to go and get your unique affiliate link. But it's actually, they're very standard. They have a kind of an affiliate ID, which is each bookshop or each affiliate has their own unique ID with an ISBN on the end. So in fact, some bookshops have, some of the more tech savvy or larger bookshops have set up, they have their own catalogs, and they'll generate those IDs sort of automatically. Also, if you go into that map, to choose the bookshop, when you select a bookshop from that sets the cookie. So everything is done up front,
right? So
that you remove friction from the consumer purchasing. Because often what happens in Hive is it's very much a kind of, if you've got some time, nominate the bookshop. But it takes you out of the purchasing loop. So we try to optimize for closing that thing. What can happen, however, is and that cookie, if you are a bookshop, that cookie lasts for about a year. So it means that if someone comes back to the website in 3 months or 6 months, the cookie will still be set. But what can happen is, while you're browsing around the site, you suddenly see a list from another bookshop or another affiliate. And if someone goes to that list and buys a book off that list, the list owner will get the commission, but they won't get the cookie. And I know that there are some booksellers and some affiliates who are quite nervous about that process, because they're thinking, another bookseller. It happens both ways around. Rossiter Books, who bring a lot of traffic to the site, they're one of our top performing bookshops, but a lot of other bookshops earn commission from having seen other lists while they're there. So there is a bit of a quid pro quo, but we try to reward those bookshops and those affiliates that are constantly sharing links and having those communications with customers. And so it's not something that you have to kind of explicitly do. But that's really how the cookie system works. It's also worth saying, just for complete transparency, bookshop cookies last longer than non-bookshop affiliates. And that's just another way, in that commission is much higher for physical bookshops than it is for not. So we try, again, it's just another way that the playing field is slightly skewed. It also helps because it's what I always tell the bookshops is invest in cookies. So when you're sharing links, so we can see this. If you share a link to a title that you're recommending, it's, that particular customer may not buy on that visit, but they'll have set the cookie. And what we see is that those bookshops that are doing those planned posts and regular posts, when it comes to the big gift buying times of the year, like back to school, Christmas, Black Friday, we will get and the giveaways, we will see a rise of people coming to the site. So those booksellers who've been working hard sharing links will have more cookies set and have a better chance of getting those sales. So we try, the whole architecture of the site tries to reward those people who are bringing customers to the site, if I can put it in those terms.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
No problem.
Alice. I think we've got time for just one more question. I'm conscious we're running over, but it's such a fascinating thing. Gail, is that your hand up? Yeah. Sorry, Matthew.
Oh, you're on mute, Gail.
Yeah, sorry, I
Yeah.
don't want to monopolise this, but there's loads of questions actually, but can I just ask a really practical question, which I think, I don't know, hope will illuminate something, is that I actually sent an email to bookshop.org in England and I didn't get a reply. So that's one thing, is how your customer thing works. But also my question is, somebody gave me, or two lots of people gave me book tokens, like ordinary regular book tokens, which I would really like to spend with shops on bookshop.org. And I couldn't figure out if or how I could do it. I suppose there's two parts to that question. One is, what's the situation with book tokens? And the other is, how can I get a reply to my email?
Well, first of all, I obviously, on behalf of the customer service team, who are brilliant. I mean, we have very good Trustpilot scores. When we set up, bookshops were very clear to us that they wanted us to be as good with customers that they would be with their own customers. So we really prioritize that. So I do apologize. It's not a common thing that happens, and I'd love to try and track down and see what happened about that, because often when you see if things go wrong, you can kind of fix them. To answer your question about book tokens, you can absolutely spend book tokens on the site. You have to go through a process where you enter in the details of the book token. The book token amount is transferred to store credit onto the site, and then when you go to buy a book, you'll have store credit ready to spend. So it is a little bit of a there's an extra step, and I would be very happy to have somebody email you, Gail, with a step-by-step instruction for that. But I can
because I mean, and also there's the thing about, because it's electronic these days, book tokens, and one of them is for £70, and I don't really want to spend £70 all at once, you know. No, I mean, it isn't a, you know, when you enter in the details, it will transfer. I think you have the option to transfer over some credit, but let me check up on that, because I wouldn't want to give you a bad steer. Thanks.
Mark, I will email over Gail's email address immediately after
No, I'll be
this,
very
if that's
happy to
helpful.
follow up with that. That's not a problem at all. Matthew, did you have a question?
I mean, it's ultimately a selfish question, but I guess it gets into a kind of broader question about the future of bookshop.org, and kind of in relationship to we're talking about Amazon online sales. So I'm based in Poland, so obviously I can't order from either bookshop.org locations, like I guess for distribution reasons. Is there, I mean, the website says, but is there a kind of a plan to, I mean, what are the kind of limitations of broadening that? Because the flip side of it is I am basically, because of my geography, forced to use Amazon if I want anything. The local are great for the Polish book market, but terrible for, you know, my needs. So I mean, how do you think about that? How do you think about kind of the kind of I'd say non-UK market that may want to shop for English language books?
It's a really, really good question, Matthew, and it's also quite a multifaceted one. So firstly, there's a kind of helping, harming bookshops question, because if we start shipping books abroad, particularly where there are like English language bookshops that offer that service within any country, that raises issues of, it's something that's actually happened between the US and Canada, of shipping books across the American border into Canada, where Canadian booksellers, because that's all, you know, English language books, and so there's actually been an agreement between the American Bookselling Association and the Canadian Bookselling Association to try to remedy that, i.e. a part of the bookselling pool goes to Canadian booksellers, and that's running as a trial at the moment. So there is that aspect of, you know, to bring it right the way down to the fact that the BA, the Booksellers Association, are the Booksellers Association of Great Britain and Ireland. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, they would love us to be able to launch Bookshop in Ireland, but the way that the wholesalers are set up in Ireland at the moment is doesn't give a kind of an easy an easy way, because the code base for bookshop.org has to integrate very closely with the wholesaler. You can order books from overseas for delivery within the UK. Obviously, there was some, when we launched in 2020, there was then some aspects of the Brexit agreement or non-agreement, depending on how you look at it, about getting books cross-border. But I think the other thing as well is with English language books, there is a very, very big political issue at the moment with English language books squeezing out the local language books, particularly when you come to young adult books or TikTok books, where kids are demanding, particularly in Holland, Germany, to some extent Spain, the kids want to read the books as quickly as they can to join in with the kind of what they perceive as the sort of TikTok sort of wave, and so therefore there's less demand for the book in translation, and therefore the books are not being translated. And at the height of it, I mean, it was incredible that the number of books, particularly in Holland, in English language, just because the level of understanding of English as a written language in Holland is so high. So that was causing real angst within the publishing industry, but also distribution and supply problems for the bookshops themselves. So it's not just about a supply problem. There are other issues around English language books that I think, when we launched, and then we launched also in Spain, which sadly never gain traction because the very, very brief history lesson, there's 10 essentially 10 different, for each of the individual regional governments of Spain, there was a booksellers association. There was a feeling that this was a kind of an American takeover. The Spanish, a group of Spanish booksellers launched a rival store, and that's just not taken off either. So we've ended up with nothing. When I went to speak at Readmagine last year and had some conversations with Spanish booksellers who were kind of like, is there any chance we could relaunch this, because the other alternative hasn't really played out. So I think there's appetite, and there are other different, and to be absolutely fair, there are other alternative bookselling platforms that have launched. There's one really successful one in Mexico which uses the bookshop.org model, but very much for the Mexican market. So again, there's a lot of these different sort of homegrown initiatives, and part of me thinks that's the way it should be. It shouldn't be for an American company to go and kind of put their stamp on in the different countries. But to go back to your question, Matthew, there is an issue of supporting the bookstores, and also being very sensitive to this issue of English language bookshops and another issue. Okay. That's a long-winded way of saying I don't think we're coming to lift anytime soon, and I absolutely understand that Amazon is kind of your only option.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've gotten used to it, sadly, but yeah.
Well, I mean, there are bookshops in the UK that will ship that are very good. I know the London Review Bookshop in London is very good at that. Lighthouse in Edinburgh, Booker in Oswestry. These are bookshops that kind of have a whole business dedicated to shipping books overseas. So, there are ways, but I appreciate, the cost then becomes an issue as well. I mean, that's, let's be really honest about this.
Thank you, Mark. Way to bring that back from the last question from the billionaires. I love that bit of marketing. So it is indeed February the 14th. So we will end by reiterating that marketing moment and saying, love bookshops, not billionaires. Can we all thank Mark very much for coming along this afternoon and talking to us? Yes, go off and buy some books this weekend in an independent bookshop or online, girl, with your book tokens, which you should be able to do pretty soon. And our next session is on March the 28th. We've got a little bit of, we're going over a month this time. And we've got the wonderful Anna Muentrath coming to talk to us. This does connect because she's talking about her work on algorithms and how selling books and algorithms work together. So there'll be quite an interesting connection here with what Mark's been talking about today. So thank you, Evan. You can stop the recording and we can release people and Mark back to the rest of their Friday afternoon. Okay. Thank you all so much.